Today we are starting the first part of a new series, The Secrets of Koi Keeping. Something I've been thinking about for a while. Basically over this series of videos I'm going to be sharing with you my secrets for the success that I get, the results that I get during my koi keeping journey. It's going to be broken down some pretty ground level stuff, covering a lot of the basics and then building up to some of the more advanced stuff as we progress throughout. So today's, and this is probably, the biggest secret, although some would say it's not really a secret at all, but for me, the most fundamental and important aspect for successful koi keeping. That's one simple word: observation. Absolutely, I'm not surprised if you're a bit underwhelmed by that sort of statement there, but it's exactly, for me, the most fundamental thing that you need to learn in order to be successful at koi keeping at any level. Now, when I talk about observation, this is covering an array of different subjects. First and foremost, the most important one, you need to learn to observe the fish's behaviour properly, because without proper observation of the fish behaviour, you're not going to catch problems before they start, before they become a real issue for you. And yeah, when you miss these basic things, you're going to create issues and eventually possibly fatalities and things that will go beyond repair. So yeah, what is good observation in regards to actually physically looking at your fish and normal behaviour? So normal sort of swimming is your fish eating happily, swimming around the pond sort of unhindered, no sort of obscure behaviours. That's probably the best area to focus on. The things that aren't normal: jumping is not normal, flashing down on the bottom drain, the bottom of the pond, off the walls, not normal. When the fish actually stand on their head sort of still in the water, or on their tail, absolutely not normal as well. And generally they do sort of swim around in packs and shoals. So if you've got the odd fish that's just isolating out on its own in a different area, once again, that is not normal. Sat on the bottom, clamped up, unless we're in winter and you've got severely cold water. Generally, sort of spring, summertime, that's not normal behaviour either. So if you see any of those signs, it's absolutely crucial that you act on it one way or another. So if you do witness any of them signs, you need to be testing your water, making sure the parameters are fine, and carrying out mucus biopsies to make sure there's no parasites present as well. Obviously, other abnormal things, the mucus layer is one to consider. You shouldn't be able to see thick clotty patches of mucus at all, because that's generally a sign when a fish is overproducing mucus, something is irritating it, be it parasites or bad water quality, possibly. And obviously, bacterial issues, raised scales, any sort of other sort of mark, visible ulceration, damage around the mouth, also obviously not normal and needs tending to. So in the case of either, again, if you're not sure, it's best to seek advice on how to act. In the case of excessive mucusing, same things again. Scrape the fish with a mucus biopsy, check under the microscope for parasites, and test the water to eliminate those. If all those are sort of checking out, you probably need to go a little bit further. It could be a problem with source water potentially, or something else in the environment causing that sort of behaviour. The same can be said for flashing, to be honest with you. If the water testing and mucus biopsies are checking out clean, you probably need to again look at the environment. Trickle in, trickle outs can be a huge cause, to be honest. I've seen that cause many problems over the years. So yeah, incoming source water is probably one of the first places I'd check, and then the actual environment itself to make sure nothing's getting in there that shouldn't be. So yeah, very important that you get to know what's normal for the koi, and then very quickly, observation is going to happen in a few ways. Observing them at feeding time is an absolute great opportunity to physically sort of have a look. You get the fish up at the surface, see what's going on. If you've got pond windows, another great opportunity there to actually see the sort of undersides of the fish and the sides a bit easier and more frequently. One thing I wouldn't advise you do is to actually go catching the fish too much on a regular basis, because that's another sort of huge stress event that's possibly going to create problems where there might not be any. So yeah, don't just think a random inspection where you're catching all your fish up every now and again. Not something I'd be looking to do. More important, you get to learn to observe the fish without doing that. So again, from the behaviour through any visible mechanisms you've got, like a window or feeding time and such bits. So yeah, for me, this is something that, you know, when new people start here at Koi Wholesale, it's the biggest thing I get them working on, because what I tend to find is on their daily checks, which they will carry out, followed then by myself or one of the more senior staff here, a lot will get missed, you know, and it's stuff that we actually, you know, with more experience pick up at a quick glance, but even on a, you know, on a more basic level, you know, stuff where you know, big periods of times actually being spent on checking them is being picked up. So admittedly, if you're new to this, you know, some of the finer points, maybe in changes in the mucus and things like that, you might miss, but let's say the basics I've described at the beginning of this video are quite easy to see. Another real great bit of advice I can give here is to actually try and observe the fish from a distance. So when I say that, typically the minute they sort of hear your footsteps, the koi will learn that the patterns that go on around them through the vibrations. So they will learn to sense when you alone are going to the pond, or potentially when someone else has come with you, because the vibration patterns will change. And generally, once they sense you, you might generally find even a fish that could be hanging in its normal sort of state will just sort of come alive for a little bit and actually come up to the top because they think food's coming. So if you can observe from afar, you know, if your pond's in you know, shot of a bedroom window or something like that, or sometimes it's be wise to really sort of creep up on them and just watch from a distance to see what's going on. You might actually find then you get the odd fish behaving a little bit differently than they do when they know you're there and potentially getting food. So that's really important to bear in mind. But I cannot stress enough the importance of, you know, learning to really understand what's going on. As well as the fish, obviously you've got the system. There's the general physical inspections there that are important. You know, you need to make sure pumps are running, filters are running correctly, everything's working on a daily basis, because let's face it, in summer with warm temperatures, if you get a system failure, there's possibly a chance for heavy mortalities in a very short period of time. So it's not like you can go, you know, just think, I'll not bother checking these for a day, because you could just miss something crucial that's going to really lead you down a road that you're not going to like. And yeah, that's the sort of commitment you make when you get into keeping koi. You know, same as any pet, but particularly these, because we're also in control of the environment that they live in and be in the water. So regular checks there, observing what's actually happening with the water parameters above what you can physically see with your eyes. Clarity is not important in the slightest, but water quality absolutely is. Observing, you know, your incoming water, making sure you're checking that regularly. If you're not using a purifier, which I'd recommend, you know, ensure that when you're adding fresh water, you're using liquid dechlorinators to make that safe. And yeah, then you know, this observation just rolls on again then into you know, feeding. So when I speak about raising koi, probably the most important part of the raising process is, again, observing what's actually going on, because the whole feeding program that I use, that I've sort of adopted from the breeders in the mud ponds, all comes down to observation and nothing else. There's no scientific methods involved. You can do for feeding, you can feed based on body weight and percentages of that, but I tend to do it all by eye and actually gauge what's going on. So although there's certain, you know, feeding regimes I'll apply at certain temperatures, getting the amount comes down to observing the fish within a certain feeding window. So just an example, I'll set a 10-minute feeding period each feed, and what I'm actually observing there is how they eat. So when it comes to doing this observation, again, I'll get into the fish houses probably 10 minutes before the feeders are due to go off, just so they don't actually know that I'm there at this point. They get that I'm in the environment, but they're not really sensing my presence, so they behave normally and naturally. And then what I'll do is just sit and observe the feeds from afar to see if they're obviously, you know, particularly keen for it, or likewise, you know, they're not really that fussed about it. And then furthermore from that, you know, when I've got a 10-minute window, I'm also then timing how long it takes from the start of the feed to the end of the feed, because naturally as they grow over the summer, that 10-minute will drop down to 9 minutes, 8 minutes, whatever it is, and I need to start adding more food in order to bring that up to the 10-minute window to compensate for the increase in size that the fish have had. Really simple method, and again, but through this I've got to observe what's going on in the entire system, observe what's going on with the water, and then also gauge, you know, where I'm at with the fish's body, which is also important, because You know, a 10-minute window might be all good, the fish might be eating it, but if, you know, they're gaining too much weight and becoming too fat, I know I need to dial things back. Likewise, I might be feeding heavily but not getting the weight gains that I want, so you know, I might need to look to increase my 10-minute window to a 15-minute window. So much to it, but the key is I'm just looking at everything that's going on constantly. And yeah, from a growing perspective, it's essential. You know, I'm also obviously looking at the colour. That's another thing that we're observing. What's the colour actually doing with the fish? What's the shiroji doing? If I feed this, I get this result because I observe and see what's happening. And likewise, you know, do the fish need colour food? Are they growing? Is it stretching out a bit too much? Do I need to use 50%? If I'm using that and the colour's still not getting where I want it, do I need to use more? And this is all the things that only your eye can help you with, and actually looking and assessing what's going on in the environment. So you really can't take for granted how important it is to spend that time watching and looking at every little detail possible every day. And importantly, yeah, when you're trying new things, it's even more important then. You know, it can be useful from a koi development perspective to observe, to take pictures before and after a growing season, for example. So your eye can actually recall what it was and where it's got to. And you can see from there yourself what's gone on, and just subconsciously then you'll pick more and more and more up. So, you know, if you're spending the time checking your fish daily, you're going to pick all this stuff up. If you don't initially, don't be too hard on yourself. You know, I sit here with over 20 years of experience of doing this, you know, pretty much day in, day out, and on a commercial level, obviously. So you're naturally spending a lot more time around the fish, but yeah, they're not to be ignored. And when they do, this is where I say it can set you off on a journey of problems. You know, fish parasites are no real concern to me. I don't sit here worried about parasites causing problems, because I know here, whenever there is anything, they're always going to be picked up quickly, medicated and eradicated. That's the best case scenario with parasites. If, however, through, you know, lack of observation, you miss some of the early signs, say take Costia for example, again, if we pick it up soon, we'll treat it, medicate it, it won't be a problem. If Costia is left unchecked for too long of a period, your probably best case after that is you're going to get a nasty bacterial problem. Worst case is you're going to get a bacterial problem and heavy fish mortalities, because that is what Costia can do. It can take a full pond out, make no two ways about it. So absolutely key that you're picking this stuff up early. Again, you know, early signs of a potential bacterial problem, you're better to get it and nip it in the bud early than let it progress to a point then where it's going to be really unmanageable and difficult to treat for you. So yeah, that, to be honest, in a nutshell, is you know, the importance there from my perspective of observing your collection and what's going on, and then, let's say, learning what's right, what's wrong, basically without putting too much pressure on yourself. Just spending the time watching, you know, every day, you will learn what is normal for your collection when everything's going well, and then likewise when something goes wrong, you'll have likely spotted what it is. The important thing is, obviously, when you've done the hard work of observing it, you need to act on it as well, and don't just think you can just sit on your hands. You know, if there's a problem, get into it early. You know, a fish isolating, the flashing, jumping, whatever it is, if there's a root cause there and you leave it, it's likely just going to make a problem worse. So there we have it. It's another one that ties into the mantra we're sort of banging of keep it simple. Observation is a really simple skill to learn. You've just got to be committed to doing it day in, day out, and learning what's right and what's wrong. So yeah, that's the end of the first part of this series. Looking forward to bringing you plenty more. In the meantime, if you are liking what you're watching on these videos, please hit the subscribe button and the like button. So yeah, this content will circulate around to as much people as possible, because, you know, the whole point of me doing this is just to educate people as best as possible to make everybody more successful koi keepers. So yeah, thanks for watching, and yeah, we'll be back with another soon.